The 1980s gave us some of the biggest blockbusters in film history, with Indiana Jones, E.T., and Ghostbusters making hundreds of millions and becoming cultural touchstones. But what people tend to forget is that the same decade produced some of the most catastrophic financial disasters Hollywood has ever witnessed. And we're talking about films that didn't just lose money, but bankrupted studios, destroyed careers, and sent A-list stars running from the industry for years. Two of the movies on this list literally killed entire production companies, and that's where things get really interesting. What came out in 1988 might be the most shameless movie ever made, and calling Mac and Me a movie is being generous. The reality is that this was a feature-length McDonald's and Coca-Cola commercial that somehow convinced people to pay for theater tickets, and the audacity of it still stands out decades later. The plot follows a friendly alien who befriends a kid in a wheelchair, which sounds familiar because they were basically trying to recreate E.T., except instead of Reese's Pieces, the alien is literally powered by Coca-Cola. One scene features Ronald McDonald showing up, not as a clown, but as the actual McDonald's mascot playing a character in the film, and the subtlety level was about what you'd expect. $13 million went into production, with most of it funded directly by the companies whose products were plastered across every frame. Box office returns came in at $6.4 million. Critics tore it apart, audiences stayed away, and everyone involved saw their careers take a nosedive. Stuart Raphael, the director, basically vanished from mainstream filmmaking after this, and the film disappeared from theaters faster than the McRib ever did. What's strange is that Mac and Me has this weird second life now as a running gag, with Paul Rudd showing the same clip from this movie on Conan O'Brien's show for years instead of playing actual clips from his new films. At least it turned out to be good for something. One of the strangest career pivots in Hollywood history happened in 1984 when Bill Murray was at the peak of his comedy career. Ghostbusters was about to drop and make nearly $300 million, which is when Murray decided to force Columbia Pictures to finance his passion project, a dead-serious spiritual drama based on a Somerset Maugham novel. Around $13 million went into The Razor's Edge, and Murray played it completely straight with no jokes, no smirks, just heavy philosophical drama about a man searching for meaning after World War I. His fans showed up expecting laughs, critics showed up expecting literally anyone else in the role, and the collision of those expectations created a disaster. The movie tanked hard, with Columbia burying it so quickly that exact box office numbers are hard to pin down, but the damage was real. Murray's response was to quit Hollywood entirely, walking away and not making another movie for 4 years, which tells you everything about how personal the failure felt. Columbia Pictures survived because Ghostbusters came out the same year and printed money. But for Murray personally, this was the thing he actually cared about. And watching it fail broke something in him. When he came back in 1988 with Scrooged, people who worked with him noticed he was different, more selective, more cautious, and according to several accounts, a lot more difficult to work with. Walter Hill wanted to create something nobody had ever seen before, and he got his wish, because nobody knew what the hell they were watching when Streets of Fire came out in June 1984 with a budget around $15 million. The plan was for this to be the first film in a trilogy, with Hill describing it as a rock and roll fable, which turned out to be a neon-soaked action musical set in some alternate reality 1950s that never actually existed. The opening crawl literally says, "Another time, another place," and that should have been a warning sign. Timing became the first problem when the movie landed in theaters 2 weeks after Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which meant this weird experimental genre mashup was going up against one of the biggest franchises in cinema. The outcome was predictable, but the bigger issue was that Universal had absolutely no idea how to market the thing, with trailers making it look like a straightforward action movie while audiences showed up and got musical numbers and surreal production design instead. $8 million came back against that $15 million budget, and the trilogy got canceled before the film even left theaters. Hill's career recovered over time, but this one left a mark. And while the movie has developed a cult following since then, with people appreciating what Hill was trying to do, in 1984 it just got steamrolled. Buckaroo Banzai might be the most aggressively weird film on this list, and that's saying something when you look at the competition. The pitch was probably something like asking what would happen if someone made a sci-fi movie about a neurosurgeon/physicist/rock star who fights aliens from the 8th dimension with his band of adventurers. And the studio heard franchise potential before handing over $17 million. What came back was intentionally bizarre, dropping viewers into this world where everyone already knows the characters and references events that never happened in previous films that don't exist. Walking into the middle of someone else's inside joke is what it felt like, and 20th Century Fox tried to sell it as a straightforward action-adventure with terrible marketing and a weak theatrical rollout. $6.3 million is what it made, marking it as a total bomb at the time. But here's where things get interesting, because the film found its audience through VHS rentals and midnight screenings before becoming a genuine cult classic. People still quote it, still wear the costumes, still argue about the supposed sequel that never happened, and while it failed commercially, it succeeded at being exactly what it wanted to be: a weird, singular piece of filmmaking that built its own fan base over decades. Francis Ford Coppola in 1982 was coming off the Godfather trilogy and Apocalypse Now, which made him one of the most respected directors on the planet, and that's when he decided to make an experimental Las Vegas musical romance while funding part of it himself. $15 million was the starting budget for One from the Heart, but by the time production wrapped, the number had climbed to $26 million. Coppola built an entire miniature Las Vegas on a soundstage because he wanted complete control over the visual design, pioneered new video editing techniques, and composed music with Tom Waits and Crystal Gale, pouring his creative vision into every frame. Critics were not impressed. Audiences stayed away in droves, and the film made $900,000, not $9 million, but $900,000 actual dollars. This wasn't just a flop, but a bankruptcy that destroyed Coppola's production company, Zoetrope Studios, leaving him to spend the next decade taking directing jobs purely to pay off the debt. Jack, the movie where Robin Williams plays a kid who ages too fast, happened because of debt and The Godfather. Part 3 came about after Coppola said he was done with that story, also because of debt. One from the Heart destroyed Coppola's independence as a filmmaker, transforming him from someone who could make whatever he wanted into a director for hire, scrambling to keep creditors at bay. That's the price hubris extracts in Hollywood. Megaforce was supposed to launch a multimedia franchise with action figures, video games, and sequels lined up, and Mattel was on board before anyone saw what the actual movie looked like. The budget was substantial, though exact numbers are hard to pin down, but what everyone agrees on is that it was expensive and that the money didn't show up on screen. An elite military strike force with high-tech vehicles fighting terrorism was the concept, which sounds okay on paper. But in execution, the special effects didn't work, and stunts that were supposed to look cutting-edge required cheap animation fixes in post-production. The whole thing looked like a Saturday morning cartoon with live actors stumbling through it, and Mattel pulled out with the toy line getting canceled before release. Summer of 1982 is when this thing had to open, which meant going up against E.T. and Blade Runner in theaters. $5.7 million came in before it disappeared completely, and the franchise idea died on arrival with no sequels, no merchandising, nothing left behind, except a forgotten relic of Hollywood overconfidence in the pre-production planning stage. Terry Gilliam is known for troubled productions, but Baron Munchausen might be his worst nightmare come to life. Starting with a budget of $23 million that ended at $46 million, with almost every dollar spent fighting disasters. Production became pure chaos as weather shut down filming, labor strikes stopped work, actors dropped out, and the money ran out multiple times. Studio executives lost confidence and basically abandoned the film, barely marketing it when it finally limped into theaters in 1988, and the signs of studio panic were everywhere. Robin Williams did an uncredited cameo as the King of the Moon, and why uncredited is a question with an uncomfortable answer, because he reportedly didn't want his name associated with what he thought was going to be a disaster. $8.1 million is what the film made despite getting 4 Oscar nominations, but those nominations didn't help Gilliam's reputation at all. The studio saw him as unreliable, expensive, and difficult to work with, and it took him years to get another major project off the ground after this. The irony is that Baron Munchausen is actually a beautiful and ambitious film that critics have warmed to over the years, but in 1988, it was just another cautionary tale about artistic vision running headlong into financial reality. The truly insane territory begins here, because Inchon was a Korean War epic with a starting budget of $30 million that ballooned to $46 million, starred Laurence Olivier as General Douglas MacArthur, and was funded almost entirely by the Unification Church, yes, the Moonies. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong, as weather destroyed sets, actors showed up drunk, and technical equipment failed constantly. Terrence Young, the director, reportedly wanted his name removed from the film, but couldn't because of contractual obligations, and the production stories are legendarily nightmarish. MGM distributed it in 1981, but they knew they had a problem, dumping it into theaters with almost no promotion before it made $5.2 million against that $46 million budget. MGM basically tried to pretend it never existed after that, and for years you couldn't find it anywhere, because even the Unification Church itself seemed embarrassed by what they had created. One of the most expensive flops ever made at the time, Inchon wasn't just financially unsuccessful, but actively erased from memory, and Laurence Olivier later called it the worst film he ever made, which is saying something for a guy who appeared in some real stinkers at the end of his career. You've probably heard of Ishtar because it's become shorthand for Hollywood excess and failure, but most people don't know just how spectacular the disaster actually was when you dig into the details. $51 million went into the budget in 1987, which translates to over $100 million in today's money, and Elaine May was directing Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman in what was supposed to be a comedy about 2 terrible lounge singers who get caught up in Middle Eastern political intrigue. What happened instead was a masterclass in how not to make a movie, with Beatty and Hoffman demanding endless retakes, reportedly 40 takes or more for single scenes, while production moved to Morocco and costs exploded. A famous story involves the production spending $12,000 per day just on ice to keep people cool on location, and that's the kind of detail that reveals how out of control things had gotten. $20 million went into marketing as the studio tried to salvage something, but critics destroyed it before it even came out, with articles about the troubled production running for months. $14.4 million is what it made at the box office, and the damage was immediate and lasting. Elaine May's directing career died with this, as she didn't direct another film for 30 years. Beatty and Hoffman's reputations as serious filmmakers took hits they never fully recovered from, and the movie became a punchline, the go-to reference for Hollywood hubris that everyone could point to. Here's the kicker though, not because people who've actually watched Ishtar say it's not that bad, flawed for sure, but not the abomination its reputation suggests. The damage was already done regardless, and perception had become reality. The big one arrives here, the film that didn't just flop but killed an entire studio in the process. Michael Cimino won the Oscar for Best Director for The Deer Hunter in 1979, and United Artists was so confident in him they gave him $11 million to make a Western about the Johnson County War. Cimino had other ideas, building entire frontier towns from scratch before rebuilding them when they weren't authentic enough, and shooting 1.3 million feet of film when most movies shoot a few 100,000 feet at most. 5.5 hours is how long his first cut of Heaven's Gate ran, and he eventually trimmed it to 3 hours and 40 minutes, but the damage was already done by that point. 11 million became 44 million as the budget spiraled, and when it finally came out in 1980, critics absolutely savaged it, with the New York Times calling it an unqualified disaster, while audiences stayed away in droves. $3.5 million came back, and United Artists, one of the most legendary studios in Hollywood history, went bankrupt before getting sold to MGM. Cimino's career never recovered as he made a few more films, but nobody trusted him with real money again, and the industry learned its lesson about unchecked creative control. Heaven's Gate is the gold standard for how ambition, ego, and lack of oversight can destroy everything. Pete and studios completely changed how they worked with directors after this, because the auteur-driven era of the 70s died with this film. Critical reassessment has happened in recent years, with some people arguing it's actually a misunderstood masterpiece. But in 1980, it was just the most expensive funeral in Hollywood history. What's the lesson from all this? Because big budgets don't guarantee success, star power doesn't guarantee success, and even winning Oscars doesn't guarantee your next project will work out. The 1980s proved that ego, poor timing, marketing confusion, and creative excess can kill anything no matter how much money you throw at it, with some of these films destroying studios, some destroying careers, and some just quietly vanishing while leaving nothing behind but cautionary tales for the next generation of filmmakers. Which of these flops surprised you the most? And let me know in the comments. If you want more stories about Hollywood disasters, subscribe because there's about 70 more years of this stuff to cover. Thanks for watching.